Hello, this is an introductory video to Unit 4 about understanding the values within your World Heritage Site or your World Heritage property. My name is John Day and I'm the Unit Coordinator for Unit 4. This training unit will help you understand why are values important when we're discussing heritage. We'll identify what is a value and how that differs from an attribute. You'll learn how to identify the key values from the Statement of Outstanding Universal Value for your World Heritage Site. You'll also identify other significant property values that exist in your World Heritage Site. And we'll learn how the key values for a World Heritage Site form a foundational part of the CVI process. So why are values important? Throughout this training course, we'll be discussing the CVI. And you can see here the CVI is values-based, science-driven, and community-focused. Last week, you talked about the scientific underpinning. This week, we're going to be talking about the values and why they're an important part of the CVI. There are two related terms that are commonly used throughout World Heritage documentation. The first and most important term is value. A value is a quality that renders something desirable, valuable, or significant. So for World Heritage, the values are what makes a World Heritage Site universally outstanding. Attributes are the things that are linked to a value and that are able to be managed. Attributes can be tangible or intangible. They are vital to understanding the authenticity and integrity in a cultural World Heritage property. But in natural properties, they're sometimes referred to as features. An example of a value and the linked attributes, if we take Sukur Cultural Landscape, one of the key values is the fact that it is an exceptional cultural landscape. But the attributes that are linked to that value are things like the stone terraces that are managed, the stone walkways. They can be managed and they are linked to that broader value. The values in a World Heritage Site depend on the social groups that participate in ascribing those values. And they can change over time due to shifts in things like social, cultural, environmental and use values. For example, if new knowledge is obtained or a new species is discovered. So values are basically time-based, they're temporal. But a statement of OUV is fixed in time at the date of inscription. So effectively the statement of OUV is etched in stone. Nor does the statement of OUV list all the values for a World Heritage Site. The words, elements or components of OUV are sometimes used to describe values or attributes. However, the words attributes and themselves and features do provide enough scope, so we recommend that you don't use elements or components. It's also important to recognise that values outside a World Heritage Site may be important for maintaining the values inside the site. For example, the views from certain arrival routes as you approach a World Heritage Site like the Taj Mahal in India. So how do we derive the key values from your statement of OUV? Well, the first thing is to find the statement of OUV, and that's best found on the UNESCO webpage. So if you look at unesco.org and type in looking for the World Heritage List, you'll get a page that looks like this. And on that page, you can search the World Heritage List in a number of ways. You can search by the region, so you can search for all the properties in Africa. You can search by countries, or you can search by the individual property name. In this case, I've chosen the rock-hewn churches from Ethiopia. This amazing site is one of the ones I want to use for the rest of the discussion on values. So this is a screenshot of the page for the rock-hewn churches. And as you scroll down the web page here, you'll see there are things like maps identified, so the outline, the boundary, all the documents that relate to the site, the nomination, the inscription, the advisory bodies, comments about it, and things like photos and videos are also available. So scrolling down on this page, you'll see here this amazing site, the rock-hewn churches, a photo, and also things like the date of inscription. This site was inscribed in 1978, and for 3 criteria, criteria 1, 2, and 3. You'll also see the map. The little yellow dot shows where it is in Ethiopia. And we can see the state of conservation reports. In other words, the years that the World Heritage Centre and the advisory bodies have been interested in this property. Down the bottom of the page, you'll see the outstanding universal value. Now, the statement of outstanding universal value is the same for every World Heritage Site in terms of its layout. For this site, the rock-hewn churches, the statement starts off with a brief synopsis or synthesis, a summary of the site. And you can see here the words for the rock-hewn churches. The statement then goes on to talk about the criteria for which the site was inscribed. It has a short statement about its integrity, its authenticity, and its protection and management requirements. So the words in the statement of OUV are quite detailed and quite comprehensive. But how do we break this down, wordy text, down into small excerpts? They're going to help us understand what are the key values that make up the OUV, and how can we do an assessment of the current condition and trends. Both these are important for the CVI, and during our unit we'll go through how to do it. Basically what I've done here is take a Word document or a screen grab of the words in the statement of OUV, put it into a simple Word document, and then I can analyse it in a way which I'll now describe. As we read down through the statement, we can see certain excerpts are quite important. These rock-hewn churches, there were 11 carved out of rock. The next statement is talking about the history of the area. We see there's two main groups of churches. There's more information about the history. One of the churches is isolated from the others. We then recognise that some of the construction is described. And so you can see here we're highlighting key aspects of the statement, and we're using different colours to highlight the different aspects. This is an iterative process, and you can go back, as I've done here, and highlight another value. In this case, it was a mountainous region where the property is found. What you end up with is the entire statement highlighted in different colours as shown here. And we can then use those different colours and those excerpts to place them in a table. And in a table, we'll group them together. So all the, for example, yellow ones that talk about the churches are grouped together, all the green ones, etc. And once we've grouped them, we can then allocate names to the key values. Now again, this is my attempt for this property of rock-hewn churches. I haven't run this past the experts who know the site, but you can see here how I quickly did an analysis of the statement to come up with some key values. In this case, there were 6 key values identified, and when I've looked back at the list of key values, I recognise some are more important than others for this. So I've put them in order of what I think is probably the most important, starting off with the medieval churches, then talking about the rock-hewn structures, and then the village houses. So you can put this information in different forms. Here I've shown the same key values with excerpts from the statement, along with some photos to help people understand. This is a sort of information that would help decision makers understand, or in the case of a CVI workshop, the community understand the key values for the property. Some important points to recognise. The term OUV is a singular term, so it's not appropriate to refer to our outstanding universal values, plural. It is, however, quite appropriate to refer to the heritage values, or the cultural values, or even the natural values for which the site has been inscribed. A statement of OUV may refer to both the values and its attributes. But when managing your World Heritage sites, it is important to identify and prioritise the key attributes that should be managed and monitored, particularly as managers are rarely able to manage or monitor everything. Clearly identifying and monitoring the key attributes is an essential step towards effective values-based management targeted at maintaining the OUV within your World Heritage site. Another use for the list of key values, and we'll talk about this more next week in the unit, talking about the overview of the CVI, is we can assess the current condition and trend of those key values. We use a traffic light approach here, so you can see if it's green, the site's values are good or in good condition and likely to be maintained for the foreseeable future. If we go down to the red, critical, the site's values are severely threatened or deteriorating. Immediate large-scale conservation measures are needed to maintain or restore the values. As well as looking at the traffic light condition, we use a simple arrow or line to show the trend since the date of inscription. Now in this case, 1978 for this property of block-hewn churches, and we'd look at each of the key values and say, are they improving, are they stable, are they deteriorating, or do we really not know? So we'll run through that more next week in the Unit 5. What about other values that are not mentioned in your Statement of Outstanding Universal Value? Well, let's explain how some of these values might arise. If we look at values from a UNESCO perspective, in other words, an international interest, and we look at the left-hand column talking about World Heritage criteria, in this hypothetical, and I stress it's only hypothetical property, I've identified a series of values against different criteria. I've also shown in the right-hand column there are some globally significant values under other international conventions, things like Ramsar or the Biosphere and the Man and Biosphere Reserves Program. So universally and internationally, there's a whole series of recognised values. However, at a local level, it's quite different. So a local park manager or the local community might have a different set of values. Some of these might be regionally significant, in other words, at a broad region, nationally significant, or just locally significant. But it's important, even those local values, particularly important for the community, are significant. And the really important thing is that climate change is impacting all these values, not just the OUV. So we've generated a hierarchy of World Heritage terms here. At the top, within a World Heritage property, certain values have been identified because they're significant, perhaps at different levels. The values that have been recognised as being globally significant and of conferring OUV under one of the 8 World Heritage criteria are its World Heritage values. Now they may be natural values or they may be cultural values, but if they're recognised under one of those 8 criteria, they are the World Heritage values. Each of the above World Heritage values has attributes, and again that's at the level at which management occurs. There are other values within the property which are important, as we just showed, and if they're considered to be nationally, regionally or locally significant, we call those significant property values or SPVs, noting they are distinct from those that comprise the OUV. So again, most sites include other values, and whether they're heritage values, tangible or intangible, or other values, these may be locally, regionally or nationally important, and maybe even considered under the national or local or regional bylaws. So it's important that we recognise those, and we call those, as I said, significant property values or SPVs. And again, I stress that all these values, not just the OUV, will be subject to impacts from stresses like climate change. One of the readings that I'll be recommending suggests that these are some broad headings that you might want to consider for your property when you're considering other or these significant property values. So there's a reading I'll come to shortly that helps you understand these different aspects of values. And this is just an example of a list of significant property values developed for the World Heritage Site of the City of Edinburgh. It was a CVI workshop that we recently conducted, and they identified in the workshop these other list of significant property values. So what is a values-based approach? Well, this is recognising the significance of a place based on the values that have been attributed to it by all the stakeholders, not just the heritage experts. So all legitimate rights holders and stakeholders. And another of the readings that I'll be recommending talks about how sometimes heritage experts have different perspectives than the local stakeholders. And the Sukur example is a good case study of that. So a values-based approach considers not only the physical qualities, i.e. the fabric of the site, but the broader set of values occurring there. So whether they're aesthetic, historic, social, scientific, or spiritual. But this values-based approach is the most appropriate way to identify, conserve, and manage World Heritage properties. And again, the statement of OUV is the cornerstone or the central part of the World Heritage Management and provides a summary of the key values that have been internationally recognised. Some important points when we're considering both statements of OUV and significant property values. If there are contrasting views between different heritage values, it will be necessary to decide the relative priorities. That is best done by working with the relevant local community. Effective engagement with the community can also ensure that heritage values are not only recognised and promoted and protected, but prioritised, so that can be great for tourism. So as it says here, the effective protection of heritage values can increase visitor satisfaction and can often contribute to your local community's well-being. This is some of the information that we'll provide on the Canvas website. There's a 4-page background information. This is one of the readings. This is an excerpt from a thing called the Borough Charter, which is an important part of ECOMNOS's guiding documents. This talks about different types of values. And the second reading is the one I mentioned earlier about the Sukur Cultural Landscape and the different perspectives of the local community compared to the heritage experts. I've also given you, for reference only, an excerpt or excerpts from the operational guidelines, and I've highlighted here where the words values or attributes are used. And you can see that it's one of the key parts of the operational guidelines. So that's why we need to understand values and attributes. As part of this assessment, as part of this unit, there'll be 2 assessment items at the end. You'll be asked to take the Statement of Outstanding Universal Value for your nominated World Heritage site and develop a list of key values and attributes for that site. And again, on our interactive session on the 23rd of June, we'll go through how that actually is undertaken. And we're also going to ask you to develop a preliminary list of other significant property values for your site as well. So what are the next steps? Well, the first thing is to log into Canvas to read the relevant resources and to contribute to the ongoing conversation with your colleagues. Watch out for announcements about this unit on the online Canvas and Zoom. We'd like you to prepare 2 short answers and no more than 2 minutes per answer for the following 2 questions. First question, are the key values for your World Heritage site, including its OUV, well understood by the managers and by the surrounding community? The second question, assuming you have some form of management plan or planning framework for your site, is the plan structured around managing, i.e. protecting and monitoring, the key values and or the attributes? And we'd like you to briefly discuss that again, no more than 2 minutes. So we'll see you on Wednesday the 23rd for our interactive session. If you can't attend that interactive session, please stay in contact because we're planning to record all the sessions for anyone else to catch up later. Thank you, and we'll see you on the 23rd.